Hey guys, it's Tyler and welcome to another CGS live stream. Glad you could join me today. Hope you're having a good week. So what are we doing today? Well, today, as the title says, we're going to be doing a mecha mummy. So we're going to do this kind of creepy zombie bust with a mechanical component to it. That's the idea anyway. And I also mentioned in the title, designing organically. So what is that referring to? Well, sometimes as concept artists, we don't always have a clear idea in our mind where we're going with something. And sometimes the subject matter is also the kind where there's a lot of complexity needed for the shapes, and it might be hard for us to preconceive all of the detail happening there. And so it's nice to have a process where we can approach something like that, where we can lay down some ideas on the canvas loosely in a way that helps us see ideas vaguely first and then have them kind of emerge through the murk. It's a helpful process, and I want to kind of show you some ways you can approach it that way with this little bust we're going to do here. But first, I just want to mention, when you go into a piece of art and you don't have a client giving you a breakdown, it's just a personal thing, good to think about some kind of a story or inspiration for you. It might even just be some art that you like. I tend to like having a bit of a story as well, even if it's just a single line, a single sentence that can inspire you, I think is very much worthwhile. So for this one here, our inspirational prompt is: the Mad Doctor built a suit for the corpse to keep it alive. Okay, so that's our prompt for this piece. And you can see that it's there's some juiciness to it, right? Like, we can imagine a few different things happening here. We don't have to go in one particular direction. There's a lot of styles you could use for this, but it gets your mind moving, right? That's the goal of it, and so it's kind of what we're working with here. So without further ado, let's actually jump into playing around with some ideas that might fit this prompt. Got just a blank document here. We're going to be starting from ground zero. And as with anything, I like to dirty my canvas up a little bit. I don't want it to feel precious. I want to feel like I can make mistakes and it's not a big deal. And these are just some textured brushes here I'm laying down, and also just kind of a warm-up, right? Get your hand all loosened up, moving around. And certainly you could have a few of these sitting on your computer that you can pull up whenever you need to make something. And I have a couple, but it's also kind of fun to just, make some random stuff, right? A zero pressure situation. Just throw some paint on there. Okay. So I have a few inspirational images off screen on my other monitor here on my other computer. Cannot share those on the stream here because of copyright stuff, but I'll just describe them to you. I have a couple pictures of older men faces, portraits. I have some pictures of ancient mummies from Egypt, and a couple robotic references. There's a picture of the Terminator robot and some like manufacturing kind of robots. So that's basically, I've got like 6 or 7 images over here, and they're just meant to give me some fuel, right? It's just some shape fuel. So I have something to kind of get inspired by, and that's a good idea. It's good to have some of that stuff nearby to pull from, especially if it's something that you're really unfamiliar with. Not that I'm unfamiliar with this, but why not have that as an extra little boost, right? Okay, so let's grab a brush here and just, again, start really loose and think about big shapes first. But we're going to let smaller and medium and small shapes kind of happen, and we're going to be okay with that. I'll be thinking about overall kind of structure to this bust we're going to do. And at these early stages, good to be flipping. You want to be flipping all throughout the piece, of course, but at the beginning, when you're establishing some of the core symmetry, boy, is it important to be flipping your image. You don't want to end up with symmetry problems later on down the road. That would be not a good thing. Now, we have tools to get us out of those jams, but nothing that can fix really, really egregious problems, so... my artwork is mostly centered here. It's a little bit of an offset here. Apologies for that, but that's just my OBS has got a little bit of an offset apparently. And primarily at the moment, I'm concerned about the skull of this mummy character and some amount of volume around this head for this mechanical suit. And when you're blocking in a head, it's good to be familiar with the skull because that's the underlying structure going on. And simplify the shapes. Think about them in a planar way, as you know, not as everything being rounded necessarily, but as distinct corners and edges. And that will help you find the perspective for some of those shapes. And as we start to establish these bigger volumes, I can begin laying in some other lines that will give me ideas on where I might want to head with these robotic elements. I think that's looking good. Let's make his face a little taller. And playing around with how much bulk I want to, you know, I'm not really certain how much mass I want to imply around this guy, but I think it could be cool if we get a sense that there's some bulk to this suit here. I'm working at 3/4 here, so we have to be aware of that line of symmetry and where we might want this design to be bilaterally symmetrical. But I'm not super worried about it yet, because again, I'm just kind of having fun with this and seeing what shapes emerge. Now you'll notice that I'm kind of blurring out some areas. That's just with the smudge tool, and all that's doing is it's just kind of simplifying some areas. When I see a spot where, well, maybe there's a shape there that I might want to play with, then I'll just kind of smudge it out. It would be the equivalent of taking a towel to a oil canvas, right? Just kind of pushing some paint around. Hey Riz, welcome to the stream. So I think I want this shoulder to be lower. Another thing to consider here is I've got my navigator up, and this is just a small little window allowing me to see the art from far away, and that is good to have in mind. And what you'll find with this process is that there's a little bit of a mess first, what feels kind of messy, and that's totally fine. That's the idea here, is that we're allowing things to just kind of happen, and eventually we'll gain some clarity after making some choices about the shapes we like here. And one other thing kind of nice about this process is that we're doing some value work and lighting work while we're designing, so there's a bit of a time savings there. So while it feels like maybe you are wasting a bit of time on this kind of exploration process, you're also saving a little time because you're kind of sculpting while you're designing, which is, I think, really helpful. We're gonna definitely want to bring in some like mummy bandages and things on this guy's face. That'll be fun. Well, I guess he'll have a nose, right? Maybe we'll give him a nose. You can use the eraser as well to pull forms out. So Riz asks, how do you keep proportions? Well, do you mean how do I establish proportions? Because initially, right, we don't really know the proportions of the designs. We're establishing those, but once they're established, it's about thinking geometrically, right? Thinking constructively, and just and knowing sort of where the edges of forms are and maintaining those edges. So that's going to be, once you've got those established, that's going to be key. Now, if you're talking about nailing the proportions of a human body, let's say, well, the first thing is to know what proportions, what measurements there are for those proportions. And just giving yourself some guidelines, so like when you're doing a human body, knowing how many heads tall the body is, using those to map out things. So you've got, the sternum, the navel, crotch here. So that way when you're blocking out the body, you have a sense of proportion there, right? So we can kind of easily lay in a figure with those heads. That's kind of how we can use those measurements to establish proportion, and then we just have to be aware that those are the tent poles of the design. I think I might want some stuff to come up in front here. Now, again, this is a process where you're going to notice that I'm going to be start changing my mind a lot, and that's encouraged. This is meant to be a very kind of freeing, relaxing process versus getting in here and, you know, getting these precise lines and drawing something perfectly, and then having to sort of preconceive all of these shapes, and then you may not get enough complexity out of it, right? The mechanical complexity is one of the things we really want to strive for here. Let's add just a little bit of mid-toning to this. And we'll scale it up. Now that we've got some basic shapes in, we'll kind of start to increase the size here, and as a result, increase the resolution. But adding shapes is just as important as removing shapes. So remember that when we're designing, we want to be thinking about creating areas of visual rest, and areas of focus. And we want to be thinking about the ratio between these two things. So, you know, 70-30 ratio is pretty good. 80-20, some people will say, is good. And, you know, how does this manifest in our execution here? Well, it's about the density of these shapes, right? If we have lots of density everywhere, then the whole thing becomes busy. We don't know where to look. So we have to be careful about that. And of course, the face is going to be an area of focus. Yeah, we want some detail in other places too. Just remember, simplifying shapes, giving yourself some areas of visual rest is something really important to consider in your design. I like the idea that there were maybe some pipes and tubes going on in this design, not just metal plates. Certainly we could give him some kind of breathing apparatus, but I think in this implementation, what I'm going for more is like an exosuit that gives the body physical strength. Maybe there's some, intravenous component to it as well that might not be evident here in this particular view. Maybe to be kind of underneath the suit. That could be another way to approach this. I want to establish enough presence to this guy too. I want him to feel pretty intimidating. If you guys have trouble remembering to flip your image, just make a note for it. Put it like on your monitor, right? A little post-it note or something. Hey, Blasphemer, good to see you. How's your week going? That's funny. There's like a little bit of, you see this little rim light being suggested on the side of the face here. That was, again, completely by accident. Something we'll likely be adding later. I'm not sure that we'll have the light hitting that particular area, but I do like to have additional lights in the scene. I think that's always Nice way to bring out the details. I think maybe the other thing to think about here is to be not precious about your marks. And this is our dominant side of the design here, the side where we have more clarity on what's going on than this side. So I'm gonna likely figure out more of the design here in the front first, and then start to mirror some of that over onto the far side. And so here we're going to use Liquify to just kind of sculpt some shapes. Play around with the silhouette a bit. I mean, you can do this with just an eraser and a brush too, but this again acts a little bit like the smudge tool. So I want to shift that around a bit there. Zooming way out now. I guess that's not helpful for you guys. I'll avoid that. I'll just rely on my navigator to see how things are looking from afar. This is something I'll do though oftentimes, is I'll zoom out and work live on a very tiny image. It kind of helps me focus on the macro. And again, this should be kind of a relaxing, meditative process, right? You're just getting lost in these forms and kind of hopping on board when you see a shape that looks interesting to you. think it'll be good too if this is a suit meant to power him. Then having some lit components to the suit will imply that there's sort of a power to the suit. So I'm considering where those lights might end up being as well. And it could be that it's not in a typical way. It could be maybe there's lights kind of in the seams of the suit. You know, that could be like a really kind of super futuristic way of looking at it. Or it could be more kind of retro-y, old school, like little like, you know, incandescent bulbs or LEDs. Pull this chin up just a little bit. Yeah. All right. Yeah, maybe there's a couple little sort of tubes or wires in the back here. That could be an interesting silhouette element. Here I'm going to use a soft light brush to just kind of introduce a sense of lighting to this front side. Just to add a bit of volume to that. Trying to imagine the kind of rounding of this surface overall. We can see that structurally it's all quite soft still, and that's fine because as we make more decisions here about these shapes, we're going to be able to give a sense of structure to this, and we'll be able to pay more attention to that aspect of it. Playing around with some different ideas here for this shoulder shape. Now let's maybe simplify that area. running a bit of a sharpen on that adds a little sense of realism to the edges, and things tend to get a little soft over time. So I want to maintain a sense of edges, hard edges here and there. It's one of those things about getting a piece to feel like it has that immersion, is having a sense of hard and soft edges going on. And what you'll notice is I'm not focusing as much on the face because I'm a little bit less unsure about the face. You know, I know it's going to be a mummy face, and I don't know if there's going to be anything too surprising about this. I mean, I think it's going to be, obviously we're going to want to make it rendered really well, make it cool. But I'm spending a bit more time resolving the this mechanical suit here because there's a lot more questions about it. I want to be sure I know where I'm heading with that. Some interesting stuff happening in the shoulder here that I kind of enjoy. You know, maybe we'll get a bit more flow. No, not as excited about that. I mean, you have to be kind of ready for the design to take you in an unexpected direction. I do like this shape, though. This is kind of a neat shape here. Find some structure to this shape. Cool, but I think I still want there to be a little bit more positive volume to this shape overall. So let's keep that positive volume. This is an interesting opening right here. It's kind of neat. And what I like too about this process is that, you know, you may have this habit of doing similar shapes all the time. Like your shoulder pads all tend to be, your shoulder armor tends to be a triangle shape or a box shape or whatever. And in this method here, it gets you maybe trying a few things you didn't expect. Reminds you of Apocalypse. Yeah, I know that character. Yeah, that's a cool character. Yeah, it does have a little bit of an Apocalypse vibe, doesn't it? I guess, what's his story? He has a suit, right? Is he like a, because he's got kind of a weird Kind of an undead look to him as well, right? Is that? I'm not familiar with his lore. I like the complexity of the mechanical element here on this shoulder. I want to introduce that here in the center as well, I think. And when you're adding elements of a particular shape language, I always like to try and get it into the design at least 3 times. It's 3 times means it's kind of solidified. It feels intentional and doesn't feel like it's an orphaned, weird shape. But when you establish your areas of density, you know, like these little focal point areas here, it's good to be aware of, you know, how dense do you want to make the detail. If you're going for realism, then you can certainly go quite far with that detail there. And in a production setting, this kind of a piece would be sort of like an initial pitch piece where you'd be like giving people an overall vibe for where you're heading with something, and then once they like it, then you could come in and if you needed to, you could do like a turnaround, right, where you do some line art, give them some detailed views, resolve any little tiny shapes that you might have been too vague with here. But these are good for kind of getting the conversation rolling on something. So oftentimes you're gonna be working with, you know, leads and directors and things who, you know, they may not know what they want, but they know what they don't want when they see it. So you have to just kind of get ideas in front of them. And these little sub panel lines, these little tiny lines, are things that you can easily add in later. You know, we're gonna definitely have a pass that's gonna do that level of detail here, but I don't get too lost in that at this stage. Again, a random little underlight implied there that, you know, that's cool and all, but I'm not ready to be making those kind of choices yet. Although I am liking some of the shapes happening here. I'm thinking we can start to bring that over on the far side and feel that symmetry out, see how it's looking. You know, so we'll get that tube in there implied, and you know, we have these sort of bars coming down like this. Let's bring in some of that value over on the far side there. And let's flip it again just to see how things are feeling. Okay. All right, I'm liking where it's headed so far. I don't want to get this this big shoulder unit in here now. It's basically that kind of shape there. Yeah, I'm going to truncate the design, I think, here. You know, we're just going to kind of focus on this this head area here. That's going to be our emphasis for this particular piece. Now, of course, if you had a need for an entire body design, you could easily just take this, right? If someone had signed off and said, yep, we like this, this is a cool head design, we like this helmet area, that's all looking cool, then you could easily just expand this out, right? That would be an easy thing to do. I wonder, let's play actually for a moment around with the idea of just widening this overall. Let's just beef him up a little bit. Yeah, let's do that. Cool. Yeah, I think that's I think I'm liking that. Let's give him a little bit more mass. I think one of the things about this process that you have to really start to understand is you're going to have uncertainty as you're working, and you have to be comfortable with that uncertainty. It can feel a little bit scary to not know exactly where you're headed with something. But that uncertainty gives a landscape filled with opportunity. It's my Facebook page. It's better actually if you check me out on Instagram. That's my primary social platform, which is just Art of Ty. Art of Ty. Instagram, hashtag, whatever. At or hashtag. I never know what the heck the difference is. You guys will probably know better than I will about that situation. Okay, let's see here. Let's do another little flipperoonie here. I'm gonna liquefy this because I want to get these shoulder pads facing a little differently here. Just kind of shift that shape a little bit. And so what you'll notice too is that I was working kind of no closer than this level of zoom so far. And preferably I would have even been further out like this. But when we start to get more resolved here, I'm going to be zooming in more. We're going to be getting closer to this. And of course, when we zoom in, we're like, oh my God, look at all the mess in here. And it's all, it's all messy and nasty. But that's totally fine, right? Because we're finding shapes in all of these marks. You kind of want this like shape soup, for lack of a better term there. And we're gonna have a lot of fun with this face here. We're gonna try to get pretty detailed with this situation, which will be really cool. And he's like a, crinkly mummy, so we're gonna have plenty of sort of like creepy, crusty, fleshy things going on here. And I'm gonna kind of start with a head that has more reasonable volumes, and then we can start to kind of chip away if we want to at it. And something cool might be to at some point later add some accent lights that actually are hitting his face from the suit. Maybe there's like a light kind of in the suit underneath here, and then maybe we'll have it hitting the underside of his face a bit, or some side lights or something. That might be kind of neat to play with too. And we're going to keep these sockets pretty dark because we want them to have that sort of sunken mummy skull-like thing going on. So that's going to be the goal here. And if we end up lightening it too much in our process of defining these smaller forms, then you can easily just kind of take a pass on top and darken it again. But what's super fun now is we have this overall shape and structure. We have kind of like a skeleton for where we want to go with this. And when we zoom in now, we have that framework to work within. And we even have some lighting and values that are starting to get there too. And at this point, it really just, this just a lot of fun coming in here. And I mean, I'm kind of like a detail person anyway, so I really enjoy this part of the process where I can get in here and noodle the heck out of these little shapes and get this person. So now I'm looking at, I've got like a picture of an old dude's face over here, and I'm looking at some of the wrinkles on his face, you know, just seeing like, okay, that's kind of a cool little wrinkle he's got going on there. And this is the mummy too, right? So we can go even crazier with that if we wanted to. And we are going to get crazy with this face, friends. We are going to get crazy with it. If there's any place to spend a lot of time on a piece that's in the focal point, and if you're doing a character, the head is going to be that focal point, whether you want it to or not, unless you cover it up, right? But even still, people are going to look at the head first. Or they're going to be looking for the head and wondering what's going on with the head there. Why do they have a paper bag over their head? Reminds me of that Guilty Gear character. You guys know Guilty Gear, a fighting game? They have a character who's a creepy doctor, and he has just a paper bag over his head. It's pretty funny. Let's get crazy. I like it. Hey man, you gotta get crazy sometimes. You gotta just go for it. Now, what I'm not certain about is how I actually want to deal with the eyes themselves. Like, do we want to have... I want them to definitely look scary. So we want to make sure that we don't make them feel too alive, I guess maybe is the word for that. We'll mess around with that. We'll see. But I think the darkness and the kind of hollowness is something that is likely going to be a desirable feature here. And we have some room to play around with this. We don't know how old this mummy is. We don't know conditions that he was kept in. You know, maybe he was fairly well preserved. You never know. Again, this is our own design, so we have some freedom here. If you were working with a particular production and they were like, well, look, this thing has to look really old and crunchy, well, you have to just factor that in. But this is one of those faces where I want to kind of give it some fun, distinctive elements. It's not something we need to be precious about the smoothness or perfectness. Is that a word? Perfectness? Probably not. We want to make it look pretty distressed and messed up. So flipperoonie here, see how things are feeling, make sure it's not getting a little lost on us. So, you know, see this thing here, it's like these little black dots. I didn't really plan that, right? That's just kind of there, and it's neat. Like, what the heck is that? Maybe it's some weird scar or like some, you know, I don't know. Well, but that's kind of neat, right? So this is, again, something that wouldn't have happened if I'd been really precious about everything from the get-go. perfection, yeah. Sometimes the regular word just doesn't have the right kind of impact you're going for, you know? I make up words all the time. Sometimes it's just needed. And there'll definitely be maybe some more bandage. I don't know. Maybe the bandages on the head's going to be enough. On the forehead here, not the head. This is the whole head, the forehead. Yeah, I think that might end up being enough. Let's start establishing some of those choices on this far side here. And just as a note too, you know, we're an hour in here, and we can see that we've established a lot of ideas in an hour here. And in fact, this would be potentially something that you could show somebody, and they would have some rough idea of what you're thinking, right? Like that, it would be unreasonable to share this. I wouldn't. It's not quite there yet. Playing around with that jaw shape there. Yeah, that's a little better. It's getting a little out of whack there, and actually this far side of the head too. I want to play around with that slightly. Thank you, Liquify. Always helpful tool. Yeah, and inevitably we're going to have a desire to bring in even more mechanical complexity in some of these spots, which will be fun to play with. The thing about realism and stuff like that is the fidelity, the granularity, maybe is the best word to use there. It needs to be appropriate. And likely smaller and crisper than you're imagining initially in your head. So just keep that in mind. Let's use my round brush here, simple round. This is an interesting line right here. And maybe that's a bandage kind of wrapping up over the face like that. It's kind of neat. Let's do that. I like that. Hey, Sander, welcome in. Am I using reference for this? So at the beginning of the stream, I mentioned what I have on my other computer over here. I have a picture of an old man's face. I've got a couple pictures of old Egyptian mummies, and I have a couple robot pictures. The Terminator robot. I've got a couple images of some construction, kind of like manufacturing robots. So that's basically what I've got. This image here is not like a one-to-one with any of what I'm looking at here. It's more just kind of looking at shapes and ideas from the reference, and kind of, yeah, just letting it give me ideas, really, is what they're there for. So I don't show them because, again, with YouTube and all that kind of stuff, I can't show anything that might be copyright issue, unfortunately, which is really annoying. But hopefully that gives you an idea. It's like a kind of a mood board, which is always really helpful when you do concept art, just having some inspirations nearby. I want to start to resolve this particular panel here. Like that line there, but I want it to be a bit thinner. So, you know, let's just simplify this whole shape. And let's re-attack how we want to divide this shape up. So now our level of clarity on this piece is increasing rapidly, and we'll have a better idea of, you know, how dense we might want to make some of these areas. Thinking about, you know, do I want to make this a hard corner at the top here? Yeah, I like that. Let's go with that. And maybe there's some complexity to this shape. Maybe there's some sub panels happening here. This is those panel lines I was telling you about earlier. It was just, you know, we can easily start adding in some of these things to add more complexity to the forms, and that's just fun at that point, right? We're just adding some neat details. But I'll throw some in here just so we can get a sense of how we might divide this later. And I think this is some mummy bandages happening here. I think that's what I was going for, so let's block that in. Hey, thanks, Sander. Appreciate it, man. Hope you're doing well over there. And we might even add some weird, like, you know, rotting components or something to it. It could be kind of fun. Let's flip this again. Because, you know, the other thing about flipping is it's not only going to give you a good sense of the symmetry and design, but it's also going to give you a sense of a different viewpoint on the lighting. And if you have the fall off that you're looking for, sometimes I'll flip and I'll feel like the light is maybe too restricted, or it's not cascading over the forms the way I'd like. So that's also a really helpful aspect of flipping the image. And I'm really liking the implied details happening in this area of the helmet here. Let's lean into this a bit. Something you're going to notice is that I hop around a lot. I'll get invested in an idea, and then I'll be like, wait, what's that thing over there? That thing is weird, or I don't want to lose that idea, so I'll hop in there and define it. And that's good. You want to kind of work your way around the whole piece and feel the freedom to tweak wherever you want to. And one of the things you're going to notice about this process too is that one of the last things that happens is I resolve how the forms feel like they're connecting together, their exact way that they're fitting. And we need to make sure we do resolve that, because those connection points are what make things feel believable. And it can feel like a chore sometimes to resolve that, but it is really, really important. And the other thing you want to do too is make sure that you're not losing the amount of detail you implied originally. That first messy sketch we had, our eyes were seeing a lot of forms in there and a lot of implied detail. And when we start going in and defining that stuff, we want to make sure that we don't simplify in the process. Our eye is going to naturally see a lot more than what we might initially imply as we define. So, zoom out and just see, hey, did I capture the amount of fidelity or the amount of granularity that I was implying in that initial approach there? And so, like, the density is kind of cool here. I like that, but maybe the density here is, I want to just simplify this plate. This is, again, to have a feeling of detail, we need to have some areas that are not as detailed. I'm thinking that that was just getting maybe a little too much. Also wondering if I like this do I like that edge? I think I like that edge. Maybe I just don't care for these shapes here, perhaps. We can bring in something like this. Unsure. We'll keep tinkering with it and see where it leads us. Yeah, I think that's kind of a neat shape there. Yeah, I think what I'm noticing here is that I'm liking the smaller details that feel a bit more functional versus aesthetic. Like the panel lines we had there were feeling just a little bit too, purely aesthetic or too idealized, and it was throwing me off. It's throwing off my groove, man. So I guess that's something worth mentioning too, is to just see, what's the overall vibe you're going for, right? What's the mechanical vibes? Try and keep that feeling. This thing, I think we just want to maybe simplify that into one big shape. Okay, sure. And then let's have this be a tube that kind of wraps around here like this. No, I actually like that being pretty simple there. Maybe just a single little line to help us feel the shape. And the highlight, of course, helps too. Sometimes it's good too to just kind of chunk things together for a moment and zoom out and see if you like it simplified. Like there's a lot of detail in there. Do we like it just being a simpler shape? It's so easy to test that, right? Just kind of blur it out and see how it feels. Yeah, what I was noticing is that I kind of want to show a bit of the jaw there. So I just push that mechanical line out a bit. push it this way a bit just to show a bit more of that jawline. Let's see here. Let's save this off. I'll call this Mecha Mummy. Just doing some work right now. Remember to save. Don't lose your stuff. Crashes do happen. And, you know, there's this urge for me to put cool, like, little decals and things on here, but you gotta just hold off. It's not time for that yet. That's the fun step at the end, is adding stickers to your lunchbox, right? But if you start getting fatigued on a certain spot, you know, like, you know, maybe this area here is just starting to kind of grind on you a little bit, then switch it up. Move to another area. And when you revisit it, maybe you'll have a little extra clarity on that spot. Oh, and we will add color to this, by the way. Maybe I didn't mention that, but that'll be a pass for certain. Yeah, I like noses that have some character to them, so I'm allowing myself to get a little crazy with the nose shapes here, which is I think more fun than if we were to be going with something really standard. Maybe a little weird bony ridge sticking out there. suppose at some point I should try to recenter my OBS window here. Sorry about everything being a little shifted overall. See if I can get that resolved for next time. But yeah, now we're just kind of going in here and seeing if we can kind of clean up some of these shapes here in the shoulder. And we haven't added really any specular reflections yet. You know, it's something that we'll do. And that'll create a nice pop to some of these forms. You know, getting those actual shiny bits in here, it'll start to feel like metal. You can see just a little bit right there. Starts to get that to pop pretty quickly. But I don't worry too much about that initially, because again, we don't really know what these shapes are going to be. But I'll leave those in there because I'm pretty certain about those two particular forms. But you know, that's like, for example, this edge here, I still am playing with the idea of maybe having this rounded, because I don't know that this feels like it might be the only place where we're doing that in this design. That sort of truncated edge there. So I think I'd rather play with that being rounded there. Just feels better to me. And then in terms of local value, you know, this stuff needs to be toned down a little bit here. And if any of my students are watching, you'll know that I'm not a fan of having to think about local value while I'm doing work like this. I like to kind of leave it for later, but this process kind of wants you to be doing that at the same time. If you don't like it, you could certainly do it as another pass. Not a huge issue, but I think it's kind of nice to be doing it all at the same time. You know, maybe we want another plate here. Feeling like maybe that would be a cool idea. Maybe we just need to give that whole area a little more volume in general. Let's just kind of round it out a bit. Get more of a feeling of that rib cage volume there. Yeah, there we go. Sometimes you gotta just get a little further in the piece. And so that's one of the challenges of this, is that as you're working organically and you might get lost in the medium and small forms, that those bigger forms might start to get a little bit, they might not be as impactful as you want. So just be aware of the cons of working this way, right? Like, and if you have a tendency to lose sight of those bigger forms, just think about them, remind yourself of them. You know, think about the rib cage volume, right? This kind of ball shape, and make sure that things feel like they're sculpting, that they're sculpted around those forms. That we're thinking about, you know, there's actually a head inside this, and there's, you know, trapezius and shoulders, right? You got to make sure that that's all kind of in the back of your head, and you're acknowledging that that has to be happening inside this crazy suit. I'm not certain about here is just this cross section here. I want to try and get that shape feeling better. I've been kind of tinkering with it here and there, but I've been a bit lax on defining it more clearly, and it's really because there's a certain amount of volume I want to get as it's popping away from the form, right? We want to make sure that we get a sense of it kind of coming away. I think that's just going to have to be the way we tackle that, is just to have that kind of pulling away from the form more and having a hint at the thickness there. But one of the cool graphical reads of this piece is the fact that the suit is going to be sort of darker metal and his face will be very kind of pale. And that contrast there, I think, is going to be a neat aspect of this overall. Something I want to definitely maintain. It's a little cloudy outside. Might be some rain heading our way. That's kind of nice. It's been super dry. Okay. I wonder if this must be just one plate here. Let's see. Does that feel that it is just one plate? Yeah, maybe it does. But you can see, merging these two shapes together really does change the feel overall, right? Like that. It's worth trying those sorts of things to see if we like that or not. I like the idea that maybe there's a bandage kind of hanging out over the... Perhaps we'll even play with that more. Let's get a couple sort of mummy bandages hanging up over this stuff here. Maybe he unraveled a little bit there. This is probably one of the areas that I'm least sure about still. Let's just revisit it and see what we can come up with there. feel like overall there's just kind of a flow issue there. Just not feeling the flow. I like this unit here. I think that's looking cool. This front area here, I think that we could tinker around with that a little bit more and see. How we might get better flow there. And sometimes it's good too to just kind of remind yourself that you can draw, right? Like this is not purely a tonal process. This is, you can go in with line and draw shapes too. Okay, something interesting there. Yeah, I'm definitely liking that idea better than what we had before, so glad I revisited that spot there. Also, there was sort of a design language we were getting with the body here that I was liking, and I wanted to get that reflected in the head area a bit more, so. Again, another positive aspect of this process is you can change your mind and re-establish things very quickly. If this unit actually comes out further, what if it actually kind of has a bit of a forward sweep to it? That would be potentially interesting, right? Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, maybe it's a rounded corner on the top there. Maybe we can tinker with that a bit. Let's have this be inset here. I don't know. I'm really unsure about this head shape. I think I do like it simpler, but it's interesting. Yeah, I think the simpler shape is still my favorite. Yeah, just something to keep playing around with a little bit there. Okay, well, unfortunately, I think we're getting a little bit toward the end of the stream for today, but I'll throw in a few other extra bits of highlights here and there so we can get a feel for these metal surfaces. And don't worry, we will be continuing this guy more on my stream next week, so be sure and tune in for that. where we will attempt to kind of finalize, well, quote unquote, finalize our design choices here, and then we'll move into some refinements, some polish. We'll get in and just add a little more details to the face, some texture, some grunge, some damage, and we'll start adding some color, and we'll start figuring out the lighting of the scene a little bit more. Like, I don't want to leave it on this light colored background. I don't think. Maybe we will. I don't know. It's kind of cool, the kind of super high contrast feel that's happening right now, which is there's definitely a vibe from that, but I don't know that that's what we want ultimately. I think I may want to have this be in a bit more of an immersive situation. I'm gonna just add a little bit of damage, or a little bit of grunge texture here and there, just to kind of break up some of these shapes. But you can see that even just a couple little hits here and there really help us start to feel more realistic. And there's no damage really in here yet. We can add dings and scratches and whatnot. But yes, so I will save the color and all that stuff for next time. So a good enough carrot for you guys to join me for next week's stream. But yeah, thanks for joining me here. I hope you enjoyed watching me do this first stage of the Mecha Mummy, where we were talking about organic design, which, as you can see, is very organic, right? Where we started and where we ended. We had a general sense, but the individual shapes, it was a lot of exploration, and we just have to kind of be okay with that openness and let it kind of flow, right? And so I hope that gives you some ideas on how you can approach doing concept design, and we will continue again next week. So thanks for joining me. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. It does help us a ton, really does. And well, I appreciate all you guys. So thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.